Now, the purpose of this tool is to help you calculate the discount you need off invoice in order to encourage earlier payment from your customer. And as you know, retailers are perfectly capable of paying in advance, on delivery, or indeed up to 90 days following delivery. It all depends on the discount available. Now, to put all of this in context, it's worth bearing in mind that retailers are essentially cash rich, but they do want to optimize the use of money generated in the business. They can invest money in overnight bank deposits, build new stores, or pay suppliers. It all depends on the returns available. And normally they get around 8 to 10% annually on deposit, whereas within their own business they can generate 15% return on investment, and you can calculate that for your particular customer by, if you like, working out the return on capital employed based on their annual report, in which you'll find obviously the balance sheet and profit and loss account. There's also a resistance by buyers traditionally to accept anything less than a 2.5% discount off invoice for earlier payment. This is tradition. We've been always, as suppliers, paying them over the odds for settlement just through a lack of understanding of how money really works. The key idea in all of this is to be able to establish and prove that your early payment discount beats alternative uses of the money. And that's what this tool will focus on for you. In terms of actually using the tool, it's best to start with consulting your finance department on the various options and scope for, if you like, various levels of reduction in payment period that fit in with company policy, what you're doing with other customers, etc. And then use the tool to map out several scenarios in terms of discounted levels for different periods. Check out at the same time the idea of credit reduction with your buyer in order to assess the potential resistance ahead, and in fact use your cost of credit calculation tool in order to demonstrate the value of the existing credit you give. Then work up calculations for, say, 20 days, 15 days and a 10-day reduction in credit period as a basis for what will be eventually a meeting between both finance departments. Now, to calculate the settlement discount, we need to put in some figures, in fact, from your business. So let's assume that you're selling £450,000 a year to this customer. At the moment, they're paying you in 54 days. What you want is to have them pay you in 38 days. In effect, a 16-day reduction in credit period obviously reduces your risk and obviously the cost of financing the credit, given that the period of credit is shorter. Now, to get a little closer to the calculation, we're now looking at basically how often they pay us, and you can calculate that by taking 54 divided into 365, and that'll tell you they're paying us at the moment 6.7 times a year, whereas on the 38-day basis they will be paying us 9.6 times a year, in other words more often because of the smaller amount of credit period. Now, taking that 54-day current situation, then basically by dividing 6.76 times into 450, it's telling us basically at any point in time the customer owes us £66,575, whereas on this new 38-day period, that same calculation, in other words taking 9.6 into 450,000, will tell us that this customer at any point in time owes us £46,849. The difference obviously is 19,726, the difference between 66 and 46. So we're going to shorten the pipeline of credit, or we would like to, by £19,726. From the retailer's point of view, the retailer has now got a choice. Do they keep that extended credit, i.e. the extra 19,726, and reinvest it in the business, their own business, where they can generate their normal return on capital employed, which we will say is 12.3% per annum, okay? Or do they give it to us for a discount off invoice? So if we can then say, if they had put that money back into their own business, meaning the retailer's own business, they would generate 12.3%. Okay, we need to calculate a figure that would be slightly better than that. So the interest on 19,726 basically at 12.3% is £2,426,000. Okay, which as a percentage of our sales of 450, okay, comes out at basically 0.539%. Okay, so the rate the customer can get by keeping our money in their own business is 12.3%, which is the same thing as 0.53% off invoice. So we just have to give slightly more than that, and we're improving on what that retailer could actually generate in their own business. So in other words, if you gave them 0.6%, let us say, it would be better and thereby more attractive than them keeping the money. In other words, they prefer to give it to us for the extra money. Okay. So basically we can now examine then the real cost to us of that money, because we're talking about £2,426. Okay, let's see what it costs us in terms of incremental sales. It's just a check on the cost of it really. So we're talking about, let's assume that we make, as I say, something like 8.9% net profit, which is not atypical of a supplier, and that basically is equivalent to us generating sales or incremental sales of £27,261. Okay. Now, meanwhile, the retailer is saying, well, we're not really talking about much money here. We're talking about, say, something like 2,426. It's not an awful lot for you to be investing in us. So you say, right, well, let's convert that into your business model and basically assume that the retailer is making 2.3%, let's say, profit on sales. In other words, that mere £2,426 is equivalent to £105,491 of incremental sales, and that is basically how you get these guys interested in the fact of taking a settlement discount rather than reinvesting in their own business. Just move them on to thinking about incremental sales as a key. Now, the important things about this particular tool, the settlement discount tool, is that first of all, it's focusing on two of the most important drivers from a buyer's point of view, namely the gross margin and sales performance. Secondly, it's important for you to maintain credibility by using the latest available returns for both open market investment and also the retailer's own return on capital employed. It's absolutely vital to understand and practice the method, because in this particular case you're going to be working against the resistance of a buyer to change, and we'll need to be very clear on how this all works. And finally, you've got to understand the calculation, because it's particularly important that you will be able to convince the buyer that your early payment discount beats alternative returns available to the buyer. Now, if you'd like to get a copy of NamCalc, best thing is to go online at www.campcityshop.com and you'll get all the details. And incidentally, if you have any queries or especially new and unusual calculations you'd like help with, we'll be happy to oblige. We always like a good challenge. Thank you very much.